Alrighty, I'm here and I'm going to be reviewing the Minnesota Regional and my run to the finals, taking down the championship. Really excited that I was able to take this down. For me, this was a huge achievement, and wanted to first of all thank everyone that's like reached out or left any positive comments. It really made the whole experience amazing. You can see the awesome plaque behind my right shoulder. It's actually one of the coolest prizes I've gotten for gaming. It's really nicely made. But yeah, I'm gonna be reviewing my run. I'm gonna talk a bit about like the meta that shaped up at the regional and like the matchup matrix. I'm not gonna do as much of a thorough review of like all the deck lists as I do often, as I'm still kind of recovering from the whole trip. But yeah, we'll get right into that. Before we get going, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't. If you're interested in some more content from me, you can check out my Patreon. I actually ran the deck list that was public on my Patreon. Well, not public, but on my Patreon. And it was being updated up until the run started. So yeah, if you're interested in stuff like that, check it out. But yeah, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to review the run, all my rounds, just kind of briefly talk about what was going on, and then I'll review the deck and kind of the few key changes I made leading up this week to the event, and then we'll talk a little bit about the meta and like the matchup matrix. So day one, round one, start right against the Kira Data Vault Mirror. I was able to take it down 2-0. These are very grindy games. We did finish with about like 12 minutes left on the clock, so we could have potentially been able to play a third one. And you know, I play very fast, and in these matchups you do sometimes need to, because if you don't 2-0, there's a very good chance that you might bump into a situation where there's no like clear winner in that third game. Right back at it in round two, another Kira Data Vault. This is actually the only time I played Kira 3 times, the only match ever that actually went to milling out, and it wasn't even like a restock loop sort of game. It was just a very long game, and we did hit each other with vigilance, and my opponent took their last 3 damage from drawing and not having a deck. But it wasn't like a restock redundancy sort of game. Then it was Sabine, but the Data Vault version. I did take my first loss in the day to this deck. Again, these are actually a bit grindier just because of how much life. It's harder for Kira to actually turn the corner in these matchups. You do need to stabilize much more. I do think that not having to play around some of these early ECL power plays can be tough, but this deck generally just plays a lot more space, which can be problematic, and that's what happened in game 2. They went space. I didn't have like a barrage to clean up. I didn't have a gunship to like fight up there, and kind of took way too much damage early from space. Round 4 is actually my friend Andrew on Kira ECL. I took game 1 with a relentless lock, and he did the same thing to me in game 2. And then game 3, we did get all the way down to time, but I was able to close out once again with like a relentless lock, relentless into Devastator, and was able to like push lethal over 2 turns, with relentless kind of making his whole turns very awkward. Round 5, another friend, Kevin. This one's on stream. I believe it was on Sea Raptor stream, although I'm not entirely sure that's accurate. And this was against Han 2 Data Vault. Had some clean games for me here, to be honest. Just was able to like answer basically any early threat. Had very powerful flip turns. I think a flip barrage to wipe a board in one game, flip to clean a board in a second, where he kind of had to like flip into a power of the dark side, and these games were pretty clean. Round 6 was also on stream against the CAD Tarkin Town, and I think this was on Late Night Gaming's stream. And again, these were pretty clean wins, although game 1 did kind of go down to the wire. He was able to like push a lot of damage with things like Surprise Strike, and he had Devastator, the red one, in his main deck, so there was like some burn potential there, but was able to take that one down. Round 7 was against Michael from Team Secret. He was a finalist at the Richmond sector with Quinlan Tarkin Town, and he was playing Raid Data Vault, and I did 2-0 this, but I do have to tell one ridiculous story in game 1. So this game was like 30 minutes long, and we had been grinding out everything. Like there was like 3 Lukes in his discard piles and like 2 home ones. Like I had lost both, I think both my Avengers already and like half of my top end. I had 11 cards left in my deck, and he probably had around the same amount. I'd already gotten through one of his Timely Interventions. I didn't know he was going to be playing Timely Reinforcements, the card that makes a bunch of 2/2 ships. And based on the resources your opponent has, and in that stage of the game, it's a ton. So I gotten through one of those. I didn't know he was running 2. I gotten through a Choose Sides, but he slams a second one and makes 8 2/2s. And I had already lost my Snoke, the one of that I had in my deck, and both Super Laser Blasts were in my discard pile. So I look at my hand, I'm like, I actually don't think I can beat this anymore. There's just nothing I can do to clear this. I need like the Palps returns and the stuff like this so I can buy back Snoke. It's kind of unprepared for a second one, but what I did have was a restock in my hand, and there were 11 cards in my deck. So I restocked Snoke and 2 Super Laser Blasts and the restock itself back to the bottom, because I figured if I was going to draw one of these cards, I would probably need the restock to win, because we were kind of both just getting decked out. And then I played Vader and shuffled 10 cards to the bottom of my deck. And the next turn I drew 2, and it was the last card. And then I did hit Snoke, which is absolutely the best card I could have drawn. Maybe it was the only card I should have restocked if I think about it again. But I drew the Snoke, I play it, his board is wiped, and he conceded after that. And, you know, that's actually the only time in this event that I played the card Restock, and it was certainly not the reason Restock was in the deck. But that was kind of the craziest thing I think that happened in a game for me this weekend. But these were tight matches. I was able to take the second one down a bit cleaner. He had kind of an awkward turn 2 where I don't think he played a unit. He had just kind of buffed one, and then Callus came down and cleared that unit. And from there, I kind of just snowballed into a victory. Round 8 was against Sabine ECL. These were like typical Sabine games where it's just like very, very close, and then one person kills the other person first, and that's kind of what happened. And I don't have tons to say here. Round 9 was against a Han 2 blue, and this player actually made top 8, so he was undefeated at this point. We were the last 2 undefeated players. And yeah, like I think game 1 he missed a turn 1 play, and I had played turn 1 Pershing. I think that Pershing drew like 9 cards in the game or something like that. It was just kind of one of those games where he could never deal with that after missing turn 1. I did kill 3 crates in that game, but like honestly, because of how far behind, it didn't matter that much. At one point, I devastated a crate dragon. And game 2 was definitely closer. He started with a Phantom, which was a 5/1 in space, and he was able to like hit me a bunch with it. But because he was in space, I was able to kind of like control ground. And then once I cleared his space aggression, I was once again able to kind of stabilize into the better villain top end. All right, that's the end of day 1. Day 2. Round 10, this is against my teammate and friend CJ. I was able to take him down 2-0 with Sabine ECL. I gave him his second loss. I like don't love the team kill stuff, but you know, CJ after that was able to run off a few wins, and he also made the top 8. So I was not the reason he would get knocked out. And yeah, like these games, I had like a clean, like it was like a really clean kind of game where I actually started Inferno 4 in both games, and he told me afterwards that his turn 2 play in both those games was supposed to be wing leader, and like typically that's actually a very good start against Kira because there's only 3 Inferno 4s in the whole game deck, but that really bricks the play, because if Inferno 4 then can clear the wing leader, then now that buffed unit is susceptible to the power of the dark side, which is a huge blowout. So he had to kind of pivot. In one game he had to play another 2-drop on the ground. In another, I think he played a Fleet Lieutenant. But yeah, Barrage was able to get a good stabilize in a game. And then in another, I was able to like drop the Walker with a decent amount of life and clean it up there. Round 11 was another friend and teammate. It's Alex, and he was on Han Green. And he was also at 1 loss, and I took him down 2-1. He won a really close game 2 where I kind of just like, for like 4 straight turns, he just didn't understand how he won the game, because I'd completely stabilized, and I just like kept just drawing air for a few turns. He like, we talked about it, about how how that game kind of fell apart, but it was just a little clunky. Like the answers I was drawing were just like not the right ones, and like I couldn't get down any big firepower to kind of push damage. But the game 1 and 3 were both pretty clean wins. Purging into Super Laser Tech in 1 was just kind of crazy. In another game, I think the game 3, there was we both ramped, but I ramped on the 4 resource turn. I had a resource left over, so I was able to play a Hylo Bond before flipping, which left me with a 3-2 Hylo Bond and a 4-4 Kira to match his 4-3 Han and 5-3 Chewie, basically. So we both just, like, I was able to flip into a board situation that we now just had even trades. And once that dust settled, he was able to play a Ewing, but I was able to play my own response to that and then kind of clean up from there. Round 12 is against Frank from the Bothan Network, and he was on Vader 4 yellow, and I was able to take this one 2-0. I don't feel fantastic about this matchup, although I did tech a little bit main board and certainly post board, specifically because I figured this was going to be a bit more popular in this meta. Game 1, he had to start on the ground, which was obviously fantastic for me because I didn't need to like worry about ties coming out early. He went with a 3-2 unit. I was able to play Pershing. He did after that go pretty wide in space, but I like that Pershing kind of rode for a while, especially after I played a Sentinel to kind of protect him. And then a couple barrages was able to just like stabilize that game. Game 2, I was able to fight through his first lurking tie with a no glory. His second one, he used it to kill my Kira actually with a swoop down, which was honestly a trade that I think okay with, because even though I did lose the Kira and the ability to barrage and wipe his board, he was able to protect his board. The lurking tie being gone and that being the second meant that I probably didn't need to think about a Vader on a lurking tie for the rest of the game. It was able to change kind of how I sequenced. On my 7 resource turn, I didn't have much to do, but I was, in my mind at least, bluffing a Super Laser Blast to hopefully get an early claim, and he did early claim in that spot. He did not deploy his leader because of that, but I actually only had an Architon's Cruiser, which was then able to come down and clear his stolen hauler, which if he had flipped onto, I would not have been able to answer. So it was just, fortunate for me in that sense, and like he, in many cases, he does need to play around that Super Laser Blast, and it just turned out that the sequencing worked really well for me. And round 13 was my only loss on the day, and this was against a Quinlan Tarkin Town. This is actually Chris Lewis, also from Bothan Network, and his win here guaranteed his spot in the top 8. So big congrats to him. He did not yet have his Galactics buy, so that's a huge achievement. These were again 3 tight games, and he took game 1, I took game 2, and game 3 was just my last hurrah, and what I think could have stabilized me was a Vader play that killed his unit, and then if I had pulled a Sentinel out of Vader, I would have been able to prevent 3 damage from a Cassian he had in play. But I did not hit the Sentinel. I took that extra 3 damage, and then I was just a 1 blaster hit away from dying, and that's kind of what ended up happening in the game. So tight games, and congrats to him. All right, top 8. So I got to get revenge against Quinlan in the first round of the top 8. This match was streamed. This is against Carlos, and yeah, once again, it was like, this was the reverse. I took game 1, he took game 2, and game 3 was a crazy game. Actually, Palped returned an Agent Callus in this matchup because I could not find a Vader or Maul, but I decided I kind of was the aggro player in that matchup, and I just stopped clearing units and kept going base, and we basically ended up in a base race that I ended up winning. All right, top 4. This was I was paired against Alex, and again, I beat him. He's my teammate. I beat him earlier in the Swiss, and we got paired again, and he conceded. And I'm going to take a very brief moment to address this because I'm aware that there has been a lot of conversation about this in various media, videos, some posts on Reddit or Discord, and a lot of opinions about this. And I'm going to just tell you what happened. We paired. I told him we should play. Alex said he didn't want to. He went to the judge and conceded. And that was kind of it. This was not a pre-planned thing. This is not like a shadow government style thing that happened. I did want to play. He didn't. He has his own reasons, and he is his own person, and he's perfectly allowed to make this decision. I do I understand people wanted to be able to watch another top 4 match that would have been streamed, and in that case, this is unfortunate. I know I've been told and messaged, and there were frankly, some rude comments in some places that suggested that this was somehow done to make me have a better matchup in the finals against CAD, which at the time we didn't even know was going to be in the finals. I'll say that's not true at all, and honestly, I'm not even sure Kira has a better CAD matchup than Han Green. In fact, the matchup matrix we will look at later suggests that Han Green actually has the better matchup there. So, telling you straight up, it's not why he conceded. He also did not concede to give me an hour and a half break. Anyone at this event who was seeing me knew that I paced for about an hour, just up and down the halls anxiously. This wasn't some way to get me better prepped for the finals. This was a decision he made independently, a decision I would not have made, but that is fine. He is his own person, and he is entitled to that. I don't have much else to say. It's just kind of what happened, but I wanted to address this just briefly because I know it's been talked about, and kind of stories they kind of get blown out of proportion sometimes when it comes to stuff like this, and just want to give you my piece. And for that, we will move on to the finals. This was streamed, played against Ray Tan, who was on CAD Tarkin Town. He bazined my ramp in game 1, but I did have Pershing, I believe, in that game, and kind of was able to catch up. I don't find that losing my ramp against CAD is catastrophic. If I have the option to keep 2 ramp cards, I of course do. It's just not always the case, right? I don't just fold to that. And that game was pretty long, to be honest, and he looped Jabba the Hutt a lot with McClunky. He was able to kind of keep his hand up. He also drew a few cards with Mist Hunter in that early mid game, but I just feel especially game 1, he doesn't have a lot of gotcha cards for the Kira matchup. He was able to just kind of grind him down eventually. Game 2, and these were open deck lists. I saw what he was going to bring in. It was going to be 3 Lurking TIE Phantoms, so that's already just something I have to immediately consider. He's going to bring in 2 Cham Syndulas, which was also going to be relevant, and then 2 Unrefusable Offer, which actually the bounty, I believe he was going to bring this in. I didn't actually see him play it, but it's a bounty that if you capture or defeat something, you get to take it for a turn and hit with it. So you could do something like play it on one of my big ships, capture them, and then hit me for a bunch. And I think he probably brought those in, but they didn't come up. But in game 2, I draw my first hand, and my turn 1 is only Pershing is my only one, and then my turn 2 is Power of the Dark Side is my only card. And Power is not fantastic against a Bazine start, but Pershing into Power is a pretty good hand. But he was going to pick first, and I told myself if he would mulligan, I would keep my hand, because if he mulligans, there's a very good chance he just won't have Bazine. But if he keeps his hand, I assume he has Bazine as turn 1, because that's the best turn 1 CAD can have against Kira, and he kept. So I decided to mulligan, because if he Bazined my Pershing, I kind of would have a dead hand. And then I drew basically the exact same hand. I drew Pershing Power as my turn 1 too, and then some good cards, but I was like, all right, guess we're keeping it. Hope he doesn't have Bazine. He plays Bazine turn 1, which is kind of what I expected him to do after he kept his hand. And I was like, all right, he takes Pershing. And then I look at my top card, and you can see an image of this. I think it was still framed at some point. Someone sent it to me. I look at the top card. It's Dr. Pershing, and I just kind of smile and put it down. And at that point, I knew the card gods were kind of with me for the day. He Bazined my Pershing. I play a Pershing. From there, this game kind of chugged along the way I wanted to. I was able to answer most of his threats pretty cleanly. He did play he had 2 Lurking TIE Phantoms early. I think turn 2 he played one, and turn 3, but I kept Inferno 4 in my hand after I had drawn it. I was able to stick it down at the end of one of his turns, so when he claimed, his first action had to be to trade into the Inferno 4 so that it wouldn't be able to double kill, and then I was able to play my Eager Escort Fighter, which I had kept to kill his second one, so I was able to clear 2 Lurking Ties kind of immediately. I think I only ever took 4 damage from one of them, and that felt really good because those are really powerful cards in that matchup. And yeah, from there, This one grinded a little bit too, but I never really felt like my life was in danger. I was just kind of playing patiently and waiting for him to deploy his threats and find an opportunity to stick one of my big units down. And was able to take down the finals here. Felt really good. Ray played really well, and congrats to him for his finalist run. All right, let's look at the deck. So I've made so many videos about Kira. I'm not going to break this whole deck down. I'm just going to name 3 cards in a moment that we'll talk about briefly. There'll be a link to this in the description if you're interested. The Patreon, of course, had this exact deck list available to it for any of the deck list tier subscribers, and they will continue to have access to any changes in the future. But let's see what I did for this tournament. So Eager, Escort Fighter, Snoke, and Callus. So these were 3 kind of main new additions into this deck. And kind of the idea behind this was kind of multifaceted. So first of all, I wanted to get Traitorous out of the deck. I've been playing 2 copies of Traitorous and Kira for most of this set because of like the pilot stuff. It's an out to Chewbacca, Lurking Tie as well. It's just a good like proactive 5-cost play, and that's really what I wanted. I wanted something that I could play on the flip turn that didn't depend on Kira flipping necessarily. Which is much easier to do in like the Energy Conversion Lab deck, where you have like Lone Pike and Gideon and you can just like do the ambush stuff. But it's a little more difficult in this deck because you just have like Barrage, and sometimes like Devastating Gunship can do it, but often Gunship requires the flip as well. So Traitorous was that proactive play, but I kind of had the sense that everyone was going to be on Upgrade Hate, even main deck, and I just didn't want to like engage in that battle. So the best card I could find for that slot was Agent Callus, and he actually was absolutely phenomenal in this event. Like this card like overperformed everything in the world against so many decks. I'll talk about him in a moment, but the problem here was that I was replacing a card that was primarily there as a space out. Traitorous, a lot of its use case was the fact that it could like prevent the gotcha plays from people putting like Chewbacca's on ships or Lurking Ties or just anything in space, right? You're a little lighter in your space answer. So I was replacing 2 space outs with 2 ground ambush units. So I had to figure out other ways to maneuver. And what I ended up doing is I actually ended up adding a 3rd Inferno 4 into the deck. I didn't put this on this picture as another turn 1 space unit, especially because I figured Vader, the yellow Vader, was going to be a pretty popular deck. And then I put 1 Eager Escort Fighter in the deck, which was going to be like, again, like Lurking Tie, but it can kill Falcons, it can kill A-Wings, it's whatever. It's like open fire for space. So I added 2 of those. So I replaced the 2 space outs, but I added 2. So I kept my ratios about the same. And then I decided to add a Snoke. And a big reason for this was, again, the Vader deck. Now, Snoke has never been a bad card. I felt like it was probably a little worse than Reinforcement Walker most of this meta until now, where I thought he was fantastically positioned. He's good against the Han 2 Data Vault deck as well, because these green red decks typically don't have good answers to big chunky units, and this one is a very dangerous big chunky unit to like leave in play. They have to play like Fell the Dragon for out of aspect. So those were the main 2 reasons. Now, I actually don't love this card against decks like necessarily like blue hero decks that play Luke Skywalker, because Snoke gets really punished there. However, the Rey decks have started to play the card Timely Reinforcements, which I talked about in my recap earlier, and Snoke is the absolute bomb against that card, and it was very fortunate for me that I ended up main decking this card because of those timely interventions. Like now, Supreme Leader Snoke is absolutely core against Rey because of that card. Like I think you just, without Snoke, that card, like the only out is really Super Laser Blast, or if you somehow stick like a giant capital ship and can barrage off of it, but that's very difficult to accomplish. But yeah, Callus here. So where is he good? Rey, for instance, plays a ton of high health, low power, unique units, like 1/4 galores, just so many of them. He's very good there. He's good against Quinlan, where they play a lot of 3 power units. So in those cases, he's solid after like a Kira flip, sometimes even before, because they have like 2 power units in play. He was good in all the mirrors. I think he sniped Kira like in 3 games, and it's like, fine, it's a trade, but you draw a card, and it's not like the Kira player can amass like a giant board on that 5 resource turn anyway. It's usually just like an awkward turn until we start getting to like 7 when we play Vaders and stuff. He had a fantastic play to like counter a Vader play in a late game against Akira, where he ambushed a Pike Sentinel, killed it. Then I barraged off the Callus to kill another unique unit, and he drew a card. He was just fantastic in so many matchups. Yeah, like just very impressive. He was good in the finals. If you end up watching that, he was able to kill a Greedo and draw a card. I think he killed a Bazine and drew a card. He just did a lot of heavy lifting. That draw is very impactful. It keeps you finding answers, right? Sometimes the difficulty with Kira is sculpting your hand to like account for a lot of different situations. Probably the hardest part about playing the deck in general is that you just have to do a lot of prediction about which cards you should be resourcing and keeping, but every card draw helps make that decision so much easier. All right, so that's the end of my recap. I'm going to do briefly just talk about like kind of the meta and like my surprises. So day one meta, number one deck representation was Sabine. I was not surprised about that. And number two was Kira. Not very surprised about that. But what I was surprised about was Darth Vader Yellow being the third most represented deck. And I thought he would be like fifth or sixth. And you saw that I was teched a bit for it. But I did not expect 50. Well, it's 55 Vaders. 46 of them were yellow, or 47. I did not expect that, to be honest. And Vader is like a very like Vader wins can feel like sometimes like crazy. Like he presents very difficult answers. The answers to this deck are very different than a lot of answers, and we'll see if like he stays in this range, or I expect it'll probably come down a little bit. I know there was a competitive team, Bothan Network, that brought a lot of players playing this deck. And a lot of them did very, very well with it. So I could even see it's potentially rising in play rate. And I was also pretty surprised that the fourth most played deck was actually Han 2, primarily as a Data Vault deck, but there were a few others, and we know a blue version of it actually made the top 8. Very grindy mid-range deck. I think it's like a side evolution from like what Rey is doing. It's just doing like grindy hero mid-range. It just does it with like much bigger units as opposed to like grinding card advantage with a lot of like go wide little people. And then Han 1 was the fifth most represented deck, and he mostly is green, although there were some yellow, and I think this deck is still very, very powerful. I think it's not an all-in deck, like an all-in pilot style deck. I know that it's sometimes branded as such, where it's just like play a ship, play a pilot, hope you can kill your opponent. I think a big trap in this deck is over piloting with it. I think this deck can grind really well. I don't think you need to rely so much on just like trying to like go tall in space. There are definitely matchups to do that in, but not all of them. Rey was at 6. I expected Rey to actually be a little more played. One did make the top 8. That was John, my teammate, and he was in the top. He made the top 4 actually, and he was on the Data Vault, and that is the Primera, though there are 7 Tarkin Town versions of this deck as well. After that, it was surprising. Darth Vader was next. That's Showcase Hunters. Unfortunately, not a single one made the top 64, so no Darth Vader Showcase was awarded. Anakin was next, then the Boba Fett pilot, and then Quinlan. Now, Quinlan all the way down to like, what is this, 9th place? And that's a fall from grace, although 2 made the top 8. And it might be Quinlan's time to kind of come back, because I think Quinlan actually fights decently into like the Han 2 decks. He can fight decently into Rey. I don't think like necessarily he's the kind of deck that's like favored into anything, but like also not the kind of deck that's really heavily unfavored into anything. And, you know, I did for a long time kind of question why this deck was constantly being as like the first or second most played deck. I did not think it was that style of deck, that power level of deck. And when that was the case, it started underperforming because so many people were geared for it. But I don't think everyone is geared for it right now. It's dropping all the way to 9. And I don't think it's the 9th best deck. I think it's better than a lot of the decks that are ahead of it. And we'll see if it comes up a bit more. And then last, Cad Bane here. And it's honestly similar to Quinlan. I think it's also a deck that kind of fell back a bit in its play rate. I don't think it ever needed to be in like the top 4 or 5, but like 10th, that's also kind of low. But that's how like the day one started. And of course, what's more important is usually, in terms of like competitive prepping, is like what makes day 2. And Kira made up about 4% of day 2. Sabine and Darth Vader were next, the pilot. And then, yeah, like this is the breakdown, and it's cool to see like one Yoda get in there. We had a Boba Pilot get in there. We actually had a Luke Pilot, I believe, get in there. And then I think it says Spark of Rebellion, but to my understanding, because when they announced the showcases in the top 64, it was a Luke Pilot that was awarded. So not sure that is the right listing there. But this, I don't have the full percentages of like conversion rates, but this is a very varied meta, and it's pretty fun. Also kind of difficult to just prep for, to be honest, because it's so many different things. I think at this point I do just like value more your own comfort level with what you're playing as opposed to just like pure power, because it's so hard to just prep for everything and you just kind of have to go with it. And this is the cool stuff. This is always my favorite. And you can see this on SW Competitive Hub. Matchup percentages. So like if you look at like Sabine CL, it was slightly unfavored against Kira, 47%, a bit favored against Vader. They had pretty negative rates into like Han 2, Han 1, and Rey. So interesting that Sabine, which had previously kind of had like green matchups across the board almost, had like 4 red ones at this event. And Kira has a lot of like white matchups, like 50-50s. You see a negative win rate into the Han Data Vault and a very negative win rate into Quinlan Tarkin Town, which, a little surprising to me because I consider the Kira kind of at worst like an even matchup into Quinlan, and seeing a 38% there is kind of wild. But you see a 60% against Cad Tarkin Town, but not against Quinlan. Vader had really good win rates kind of across the board there. You see a slight negative into Sabine and a slight negative into Quinlan, but kind of a lot of favored also. And we'll see, maybe that deck is going to just grow now and like get even more tuned. Han 2 Data Vault, kind of like even stuff, like some favored, some negative. It's just like, if you look at this chart, it's very like Vader probably had the best like overall like matchup spread. See Han 1 Green with its 66% win rate into Cad Tarkin Town there. Very favored into Quinlan as well, 57. Crushing Sabine, crushing Han 2, but then it has like negatives into Vader 4 somehow. That has to be a fluke for me, because this deck plays like 6 turn 1 fast ships like Falcon and Blue Leader. And those are like absolute game changers against the Vader deck. So I have to think that is not going to be a consistent percentage. But one of the worst number we see on this chart entirely is the Rey Data Vault into Vader. Rey had a 21% win rate into Vader Yellow. Vader absolutely demolished Rey at this event. It might be a big reason that so many people decide to play this deck, because Rey had been definitely growing in popularity. But this is fun to look at. This is one anecdotal piece of data, right? This doesn't mean everything. You even see me being like, I'm not sure how Han Green is 43% into Vader. That doesn't like track in my own testing, but like you can compare this to like, there's charts for this for the other sectors and the other regionals, and you can start like maybe massing that data together and start getting clear pictures. Like if you see it happen event after event, okay, like this event Han 1 was crushing Sabine, and this event it's crushing Sabine, this event is crushing Sabine. You can start being, okay, it probably crushes Sabine, but if it goes back and forth, then, it's player variance, game variance. And you can't just look at this and be like, this is fact. This is exactly how it goes. But it's fun to look at. So go check it out. And that's all I'm going to talk about today. Going to get some rest. Going to think about what I'm going to do next. Probably get involved in some Set 5 testing now, which is shaping up to be pretty exciting testing environment. But let me know what you think. And until next time. Take care.